Yeah. Hey, Linda, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Sam?
I'm excellent. I probably better than I deserve, and I think that today's going to be a great day. Just I got a bunch of my medical stuff out of the way, and just looking forward to the rest of the day.
Awesome. Awesome.
So, we titled this based on our conversations earlier, and it's our communication skills really generational because we have a tendency to blame it on either the generation ahead of us, some in our generation, generations behind us. And I would say, I mean, I think both of us believe no, they're
I mean,
not really generational.
I think that's a part of it,
Yep.
but um I also think it's you know, it's a cop out, you know.
Yes, I think you're right.
There
I think people use it because they don't know how to communicate.
right. And there are some great communicators that they're in their young and mid-teens.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
there are great communicators in our age group. They're great. It's a
Yeah.
combination of a lot of things. It's, how did you learn to communicate at home?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it could be cultural differences. Um,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I think really good communication starts with self and taking on the responsibility of making sure that whatever I'm trying to communicate, I'm doing it in a way that gets the point across without being confrontational or whatever.
Right. Right.
And
Right. Right.
so
And
it
and a
starts
lot
with
of it comes
me, not my generation or,
exactly. Exactly. And we teach that with DISC. When we
yeah.
do I know when you do your DISC presentation, when I do mine, one of the things that we really look at is what's your communication style. We have a guy on here by the name of Gerald Jacobs. He is a renowned published author here in the Tampa Bay area. So I want to shout out to Gerald. I had breakfast with him the other day. He wrote a book called The Monk. It is available on Amazon. It is a great mystery novel. He did an awesome job with it. So Gerald, hello. Thanks for being on.
Hi,
Um,
Gerald.
uh, but if we can't recognize the other person's communication style, or if in our own right, we don't know our own style. I hear people all the time. They're all locked into this. Oh, I'm a type personality. I'm this type personality, and this, that, and the other, and uh, but they don't know what it means. You know, and uh, I, I used to have probably not so nice words for the guy. I'm an A style. I'm this. I
Yeah.
Anyway. A lot of A type personalities fit into some of those categories. But it's kind of funny, both of us work with many folks, different generations, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier for you and I if we know the person's communication style. And we've both studied it. We've worked under, in my opinion, the master, and that's Dr. Rick Ruperto. I don't know that anybody's better at that than him. Um, and still, we were talking about it earlier. You look at some people and you say, "What were you thinking?" You know what? What made you think? In what world, when you were scheduled to be here at 6:30 in the morning, and made you think that it's okay to show up at 8:30 without letting anybody know? You know what? That, and that's not a communication thing. That's just kind of a different world. You know.
You know, And they all rolled in together. That's kind of a work values kind of thing. That's
Mhm.
are you a person that's dependable? And I would say that when we're looking at the different communication styles, I think one of the things that bothers me the most is when people say, well, I'm just very direct. Great. But you know what?
Yeah.
We're human beings and we are adaptable. So you need to be willing to meet someone halfway.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I can be extremely direct, but I try to do it when it's needed and not just all the time. You know,
Right. Right.
and there's a difference between being adaptable and flexible versus letting people walk all over you.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I've learned to hold my ground when it's necessary.
Mhm.
Um, the people pleaser in me, you know, and I don't blame anybody else. I used to let people walk all over me because I just didn't want to. I didn't want to be the source of consternation or trouble or
Yeah.
anything. So I just agreed to whatever, hoping that nobody would single me out later. And I don't do that anymore, but I'm not like in your face about not doing it. You you
And
know what? You know I'm not going to do something. I'll let you know, but I'm not like, you know.
right. And communication skills they're learned from an early age. You
Yeah.
know, how we communicated in school. I have to. I think back to a speech that I gave to an organization here in Tampa, and in comparing um, uh, how people respond and react. Um, there was a study that came out that, and it's not just the current generation or the generation before them, with dating. Okay, so so many people are using dating apps. They communicate through the app or they communicate through text. They have a friend, and they've been friends for a long time, and one of them wants to maybe take it to the next level, but they don't talk in person. And then so they ask a person out on a date and through a text, and then when they get on the date, they're both on their phones.
Right. Right.
And so what type of communication skills do they really have?
And now some of that behavior might be generational, although not necessarily. I see a lot of people in my age group and older that if it's not the phone that they're on, they're in the restaurant and they're watching the game and they're not communicating.
Right. Yep.
They're
They're on some sort of device.
they're they are using whatever is going on around them to disengage.
Yeah. Mhm. It,
And
it's
go ahead.
it's funny you say that because uh, in restaurants now, I mean, I managed a restaurant that had, I think we had 32 TVs. So
Yeah.
you had to be able to get every football game on, right?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think that and that's not just a younger generation.
No, and it's kind of funny because it's not even just sports bars that do that now. You can
Mhm.
go into
Mhm.
some very nice fine dining establishments and it may be in the bar area, but the whole restaurant can hear and see.
Yep, that's right. That's
And the
right.
TVs are on and they're on different games. And it's like, do we really have to be stimulated by whether, and I'd rather it be sports than the news, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, do we need to have that on all the time?
Yeah.
My
Right.
TV
Right.
is rarely on. We don't turn it on until probably about 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then we watch a few of our shows and call it done. Now I
Yeah.
spend my day on the computer and on my phone, but I'm working
Hmm.
and I'm
Hmm.
doing things. I'm not just here so I don't have to interact with anybody.
Right. 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 And a lot of our stuff that we do on the computer is interactive. So, you know, over the course of the last few weeks, my wife and I, usually Friday night is our date night. And one of the things, when we first started dating 20 plus years ago, um, going out to eat, dining out, that was something that we did. And so we enjoy that. We like to go to different places. But the last two places that we went to are um, national chains, which normally here in Florida we don't go to. One was convenient, and one my wife was craving a particular item. And I really don't want to mention the restaurants because I don't want people to perceive it as a negative review, right? Um, However, both of the restaurants had devices on the table. You could play a game,
Yeah. Yep.
you could order, you could pay your bill,
Yep.
you could do all that stuff right on the device. And I'm thinking, okay, that takes the interaction from the server to the guest to
Right.
a whole lower level. It takes it down to where the server really doesn't have to interact with the guest.
Right. And then it, to me, it hurts the server in that if you haven't established some kind of a basic relationship with your server, you're more than likely not going to tip as much
Right,
or at all.
right,
And so I know that they start with those devices, is to keep the kids busy, but
right.
but
But most kids have a cell phone.
it's like, when we were kids, they gave you the crayons and the placemat.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We still do that at the port. If we have
Yeah,
somebody has a document issue on Carnival, the kids get coloring books and crowns and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's interesting. And my background is food service, hospitality, and things like
yeah.
that. Um, we always taught servers um, to inspire a conversation where the guest would say their name. Okay.
Right.
So normally the server has to introduce themselves or say their name 3 times. If
Yeah,
you could get the guest to respond the same way, your tip went up exponentially, 35 or 38%. I
right.
don't remember the numbers. But if you get that guest to call you by name, and then teach all sorts of tricks in communication and
Yeah.
communication styles and skills, and it just it ups the interaction. And if the guest knows your name and you did a good job, you
Uh-huh.
took care of them, what are they going to do next time they come in? Hey, Mandy waited on me last time. Is she working today?
Right. Can I send her a
And
section? Yeah.
yeah, and now Mandy's probably not going to remember them
Right.
until they've been there a couple times. And unless you're like Gosha at Wild Rover, who I haven't been in there in several months now, I guarantee you she knows. She probably asks if I want the salad that I normally get because it's a really awesome salad. And um, she would know what I want to drink
That's
because,
that's the mark of a really good professional.
yes, we would have 35 or 40 people and she would remember almost everybody.
Wow.
Phenomenal mind. You take a couple of those and you can run any restaurant. Anyway, I
Yeah.
digress. But that's communication also.
Yeah.
You've recognized that person and you've said, I've served you a couple times and I know what you like. Would you like to try that? What it does is it takes the stress off of going through the menu and trying to decide which one. Oh yeah, okay, I'll have that salad. I really like that salad. Anyway,
Yeah.
but it's interesting when people when you approach people and how you approach them. We were out to Honeymoon Island the other day. It's the first time we've been out there in a long time. And they're doing some revamping of the little pubs that are there and things like that. The one wasn't even open. And it's funny, the beach changes almost every season because of where it sets, because of the Gulf, because of the storms and all that kind of stuff. But there's one area down towards the end of the island where we would go and sit and have a beer and watch the sunset. And they always have somebody new in there serving. Why? Because they can't make enough money, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I can't remember. I don't remember. Rita wanted a hot dog for some reason and some French fries. It made no sense to me, but that's what she wanted, so that's what I got her, right? And a couple of beers, and the bill came to, I don't know, somewhere. It was where I was going to get like $11 in change, and the server started to pull out a 10 and a 1. I said, "Do you want a tip?" "Well, they're not required." I said, "That wasn't a question." I said, "Do you want a tip?" "Of course." "Okay." I said, "Then give me a 5 and 6 ones or 2 5s." I was trying to teach her a lesson.
Right.
And so she gave me 2 5s and a 1. So I put 5 in the tip jar. And there's people behind me, so I walked away
Yeah.
and she said thank you and everything else. So after everybody left, she's just standing there waiting for the next people, right? And I went up, I said, "Do you understand what we just did there?" And she said, "No." I said, "You told me by giving me a 10 and a 1 that all you wanted was a $1 tip." She looked at me, she said, "Well, I didn't say that." I said, "Did you think I was going to drop a 10 in there?" "Oh, no, probably not." I said, "So the theory behind that is,
Oh, right. Yeah.
if you give 2 5s, somebody like me will probably drop the 5 in there." I said,
Right.
"However, a 5 and 6 ones, you're going to get $2 or $3 as opposed to a dollar."
Right.
And she says, "I'm going to try that." And so, but here's the thing, young girl, probably late teens, early 20. Okay. Um, she was open to the communication from an old fart like me, right? She
Right.
didn't shut down. She didn't close. So somebody taught her somewhere along the line, family values or whatever, to be open to basically just about anybody when it
Yeah.
comes to instruction, when it comes to guidance, when it comes to things like that. A lot of people out there aren't like that.
Yeah.
When you try to give them any type of direction, they shut down.
Everybody wants to be right.
Mm. Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely. Oh my.
that can be such a difficult thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Do you want to be right or do you want to be open?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, there's there's no growth in being right all the time.
No. No, you don't learn. You don't learn anything.
No, and for the most part, you shut out
Mhm.
any opportunities for expansion and new ideas, any of that.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting to me when, people are like, well, just my opinion, but and you know, I'm not sure if it was Paul or who said, every opinions are like belly buttons, everybody's got one and they should probably keep their own. Um,
Yeah. Right. Right.
and
Yep.
I think opinions, using that word puts people's back up.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you can say, you know what, this is how I look at it, or my experience is. And I try to make sure people understand that my experience is not the only
Mhm. Mhm.
experience. It's the experience I've had.
Mhm.
Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It just means
Mhm.
this is this is what I have learned from what's happened to me.
Right.
use it
Right.
as you will.
Right. Right. And that's on the coaching side of it, that's where I saw an article the other day where it says the world doesn't need a whole bunch of 20-year-old coaches and mentors. Now, I'm not degrading anybody in that age range. On the other hand, life experience accounts for something. You can sign up online for $29.95 and become a certified life coach.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, there are some things I would take advice and allow a 25-year-old to coach me, but you got no life experience. You know.
Well, and in some ways, if you look at that, their life experience is very different than ours was at that
Mhm.
age. So
Right,
there are
right,
definitely things we can learn from them because,
right.
if somebody's 25, they've probably grown up on this.
Yes,
And you don't even have to teach them how to do things on their phones or on their computers. It's just they've always been, that's been
second
their
nature.
exposure.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that when we're looking at generations, the generations aren't just this age group from here to here, and 25-year-olds are not the same over all the generations. You know,
Right, right.
70-year-olds are not the same over all generations. My dad at 70 had a very different life than I will have at 70.
Yes.
Um, so we have to be open to
Mhm.
hearing what's being communicated, asking questions when we don't understand,
Mhm.
and part of that communication process is asking it in a way that doesn't sound like you're disagreeing or doesn't sound like you're telling them they're wrong. You're just asking for more clarity.
Right.
We're adults, right? And there are things as adults we should know how to do. And
Mhm,
one is
mhm,
to adjust our communication style so that the best outcome possible comes from the communication. And
yeah.
not on the political side, but when you look at like what's going on over in Iran, we go back and forth so many times.
Mhm,
Obviously, the communication is not what they think
mhm.
it is on either side.
On either
They're
side, yeah.
they're they're saying what they want, they're not listening, and then they're doing whatever.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's not working there. And if you tried to do that in your everyday life, that doesn't work either.
Right,
You
right.
won't you won't stay in a relationship very long.
Mhm.
You
You
won't
know,
keep a
and
job very long.
right, right. And we underestimate the value of good communication
Mhm.
skills when it comes to work, family, you know, life, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been asked to do some weddings from time to time as a pastor and everything, and I'm licensed to do that and everything else. However, almost every one of them uh, I said no to because they wouldn't take the 3 or 4 hours worth of coaching and direction that I require before I do a wedding. Um, and quite frankly, one of the things that I talk to them about is, have you talked about money? Have you talked about finances? The operative answer, or the answer I get 95% of the time, no.
And
You
that's
know,
just a recipe for disaster.
it is. And
Because if you
then
won't
one of
talk
the other
about it
questions,
before you get into that relationship, it's not going to get any easier.
no, it's not going to easier. It's not going to get any better. And then the other thing I ask, and uh, it, it, I had one guy tell me you shouldn't ask that question. I said, "What about children?" Have you talked about children, having children? Well, no. Well, if you haven't talked about it and he wants children and she doesn't, y- you got to open the communication. Um, and then I asked them to give me their perspective of what a good marriage looks like. And then that, so that opens up the communication lines. And, um, uh, it's a tough call, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why I haven't done many recently, and it's because I have to have those conversations. I can, in good conscience, go in as a pastor, and I see these guys do it all the time. I mean, we have one guy who comes in at the port. People get married on the ship and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
and you can tell that he really doesn't know the people.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have to become best friends with them, but I can, in good conscience, license a marriage when I haven't had a conversation, you know? And so um, communication starts when you're little. Um,
Yeah.
what kind of communication skills you're going to have. If your parents continually shut you down at the dinner table, we grew up in an area where children should be seen and not heard.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes that still comes back to bite me. It's maybe I'm not a senior person in this conversation, so I should keep my mouth shut. Now, through the years of managing businesses and things like that, I've learned to speak up a little more. But if you grew up in that children should be seen and not heard, or no, you don't bring that topic up at the dinner table, or whatever, then there are some skills that are lacking.
Right. Or you don't bring that up in company.
Yeah, yeah,
And there probably are still some topics that you don't necessarily bring up in company, just because, although you have to define company.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing
Yeah.
is that uh, a lot of times we say, well, we don't want to talk about that in mixed company. Okay.
Right.
So I understand, and some topics probably shouldn't be. But if you don't explain to a child or a young teen or even a 20 something why that conversation is not appropriate right now, they're never going to learn. And that's probably, I would say, for me, I look back on my inept parenting skills and say that's probably one of the serious downfalls that I've had. So, I mean, it's just a matter of uh, explaining ourselves.
And then the other thing is recognizing where you can do better and
Hmm.
making the
Hmm.
effort to do so instead of just saying, well, that's just how I am.
Right, right,
And
right,
I think there's a whole lot of people in any generation that use that bailout. Well, that's just how I am. And
right,
you know, you you work on changing things not just because maybe somebody asks you to or you're trying to keep the peace, but you need to be cognizant of when change is a helpful thing
right, right.
and it's something that you are willing to do.
Hmm. Yeah, and uh, it's. I'm thinking about a situation I know I'm going to be involved with here pretty quickly. Um, uh, when when I was taught to speak, and when I was taught, and most of my speaking has been in church or in faith-based situations. When I go out, people know that that's where I'm coming from, and that's going to be part of my talking points. Okay, but there's three things, and it took me a while to really understand those three things when it comes to speaking. Um, uh, Head, got to have knowledge. Okay.
Mhm.
Heart, people have to know that it means something to you, and humor. And so those three things, it's easy to do it that way because I can tell people the three H's, right?
Right.
And so anyway, and when I was training young pastors and working with people who wanted to learn to be a speaker in church, those were things that I, would look for whenever they got up to speak. Anyway, long story short, um, teaching people that I have a scenario right now that I'm in the middle of that I cannot get a superior to understand. And um, so, and I have yet to figure out, I know what her communication style is. Um, and unf- she's one of those rare mismatch when it comes to disc.
Okay.
And so, um, and if I say too much, she'll know who I'm talking about. And so, but I've had to really adjust my communication with this person so that number one, I don't offend her because of the way she takes things,
Mhm.
and then I need to know what mode she's in, and then I've had to ramp up my listening skills with her.
Mm.
So because communication isn't just yapping,
Right.
it's listening and um, being able to give the proper direction and answer that people are looking for.
Well, and listening to listen, not to respond. So being
Yes,
willing to hear the whole thing
right.
before you formulate your response. And, one of the things we've learned over the years through all the work we've done with Paul is that a lot of times people are just listening and they've already determined their response, and the other person is still talking. So
Yep,
they're missing stuff because now they've already decided what they're going to say and they're not listening anymore.
yep.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest gifts you can give another person is to truly listen,
Mhm, mhm.
not
Yeah,
sort of listen.
sort of listen. Yeah, yeah. What's the average? 17 seconds.
Yeah.
The average person listens before they're ready to respond. I mentioned that to a pastor friend of mine, and he says, "Oh no, that's not true." Well, really, pay attention to your conversations. He does a lot of counseling. He does, and um, I see it now. And he improved a lot when he was focused on the fact that I do need to listen. I do need to hear to the end. And we all know the way you respond. We want to hear what the person is saying. And if I don't understand, or even if I do, I still repeat what they said.
Hmm.
Okay. And he began to do that for a while. And then that made him listen for a while. But now he's back to basically responding before the person is done. And he does some public things that I watch and pay attention to, and I see that regression. But that's a learned skill. It's a
It
soft skill,
is.
but it's learned.
And and we call it a soft skill, but I call it a necessary skill.
Mhm.
Um, when you think about it, it's so important that we not just hear what's being said, but we understand the feeling tone behind it. And to do that, we need to give our full attention. Now, when we're coaching, we're taught how to listen intently and not jump in and respond right away, and also how to make sure we've understood, how to read it back, you know,
Mhm.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly, or I want to make
Right.
sure I understand. That allows that person to feel heard
Yeah.
and not just, part of the
Right.
part of the interaction. And if you don't think that's an important thing to give someone, think of how you feel when you don't feel heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we carry that around with us whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
We allow that to affect our relationships, our interactions, our decisions even.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so being able to do that, like I said, to me that's a gift to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
If people feel that they're not being heard, yeah, you,
they're going to shut down right away
they
and the
are.
conversation is
And
lost.
if you're the one doing the speaking or you're having the conversation and they feel like you don't hear them, you're getting nowhere.
No, you know,
So,
it takes both sides, and both sides have to be willing to do that open
mhm. Yeah.
communication.
Yes.
And I don't do like marriage counseling or anything, but I would think that that's one of the hardest things probably about marriage counseling is that getting the couple to be willing to really be open.
Yep. Yeah. It's, what's interesting about that, especially when you're dealing with a couple, is on the pastoral side, shut up.
Yeah.
When I'm in a marriage situation, somebody's getting married, and I am not a certified counselor or anything like that. If somebody comes to me and they want counseling, I will send them to a professional. You want coaching, it's a different story. I'm good at that. But if you're having a problem in your marriage, you need to find a professional counselor.
Yes.
When I'm in the beginning, when I first started doing the marriage, I call it. It's not marriage counseling; it's pre-marriage counseling. It's a
Right.
series of questions to open up the lines of communication, and that's all it is. It's not. It's not judgmental. It's not anything like that. It's all I do is try to open up the lines of communication, and um, the first few times I did it, I sucked. It was I would ask the question and then I would begin to prompt for the answers.
Ah,
When I learned to shut
yeah.
up after I asked the questions, then I got realistic conversations. Now, fortunately for me, the few that I really messed up the the pre-marriage counseling, I'm thinking of one couple now. They've been married. I think they're 15 years now, and uh, 3 kids later. No, it's longer than that. Oh well, I to think back on that, and I have one couple come to mind, and no matter how much work you do as a coach, how much work you do when you're trying to set somebody up for success, um, you don't really know. Once your sessions are done, once they're moving on and stuff like that, you don't really know how successful they've been in it. Now, there are some things with social media you can follow, but social media is, you know, they can lie.
I was gonna
So,
say, you have to be so intentional about,
yeah,
do your research. I mean, do your research on us.
yeah, yeah,
Don't just take what we say as gospel. We're speaking again from our experience, but
yeah,
research the people that you're gonna listen to.
yeah, yeah. Pay attention to who you're listening to. Hey, Linda, we
Yeah.
have a guest coming up on the 24th of June. I think it's the 24th. Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Michelle Caprio will be
So
on.
excited to have Michelle on.
I
Yes.
am. She's written another book that's published. It's on Amazon, and it's a follow up to her first book. It is more of a journaling based on her. Um,
It's
oh,
kind of a companion to the first one,
it's
right?
a companion book, yes. And so we're going to have her on. She's going to talk about it and talk about her experiences there. That's
Yes.
the 24th. We will be doing that a little bit later in the day. We'll start around 2 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah.
Michelle does some stuff with private schools and certifications and things like that. So if you want to know about Michelle, you go to Wings of Eagles edu. She's very accomplished when it comes to the teaching and working with private schools and things like that. And I enjoy her book. It's basically a daily I am
Yeah.
book. It's inspirational. Quite frankly, she's come up with some really good stuff. So,
Yeah.
and
I remember when she wrote the first one and being kind of in on the back end of that as she was deciding what to do with it. And if you doubt the power of I am statements, don't.
yeah,
Don't doubt.
yeah, just
They
don't doubt.
are,
Yeah.
they are. And she has put together
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
amazing work around that.
Right. Right. And the journaling side of it is so important.
Yes.
So, so anyway, that's on June 24th. It'll be 2 p.m. Eastern. We invite y'all to that. Other than that, Linda, I think we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
All righty.
All right. You guys have a
Thanks
good
for
one.
listening, folks. Live intentional, be very blessed, and we'll see you again.